Guys, what's going on? Welcome to Cereal at Midnight. My name is Heath. Joining me for a conversation about 1959's Weird, Wonderful Santa Claus is Daniel Griffith from Ballyhoo Motion Pictures. Daniel, what's going on?
Ah, Merry Christmas, everybody.
Merry Christmas. It would be impossible to talk about this movie without talking to you about this movie because, there's this Blu-ray that's out for this film, and you are listed as a K. Gordon Murray historian. You have a commentary on this. You did the bonus documentary for it. You are a walking encyclopedia about K. Gordon Murray and this movie in particular. So it's late 50s. It's a Mexican movie, and it is genuinely crazy. I mean, it's Santa. He seems to live in space. There's like rocket aspects to it. He's fighting the forces of Lucifer and his chief minion Pitch, I guess. And it is just nuts. Talk about the K. Gordon Murray aspect of bringing this to America.
You have to first start with K. Gordon Murray. There's a lot of myth and conjecture that surrounds this character. Part of delving into the truth of K. Gordon Murray is to not diminish or take away that myth, that veneer that is glossed over this person. And for people that don't know who he is, it really doesn't matter. But for people that that are familiar with some of the films that he, that he unleashed upon the world, he's a mystery. And I've delved deeper than probably anyone on the planet into this guy's life, and there are still aspects that are a mystery that I still am struggling to uncover. With Santa Claus, there are two stories that pertain to how K. Gordon Murray ended up with Santa Claus. K. Gordon Murray did make a trip to the studios in Mexico City. He made a trip there. He met with Senor Calderon. I think he was interested in basically acquiring and repackaging foreign product for U.S. audiences, but I think he was looking for something specific. I think that he saw that there was a developing industry that would come to be really cable television, that was looking for product that could be released in packages. They were buying packages. By this point, American International, Allied Artists, they had started making some waves, selling off television packages for films they released theatrically. And I think that he was kind of looking at the horror films of the 50s in Mexico as being something for that. While he was there, trying to make that deal, he happened to, being touring across the sound stages on the back lot, and on one of the stages there was this just amazingly large set. It took up the whole stage of Santa's workshop, and I think something hit him there. I think we're talking about a guy who was quoted during the time that he had a traveling show, a circus, if you will, more like down on its luck carnival. But he really aspired to be kind of a P.T. Barnum kind of personality, and in a way fused that with Walt Disney, who was another person he idolized. And I think he saw something, the P.T. Barnum in him saw promotional potential for this, and the Disney in him saw this magical charm that came. If you could just take this construct and Americanize it, which is interesting because in Mexico, what they were doing was taking an I would say a gringo construct and trying to sell it to Spanish-speaking audiences who didn't really buy into the whole Santa Claus Christmas tradition at that time. And so, but I think he saw this wonderland and made the deal, and actually was involved to an extent with kind of, I guess, Americanizing aspects of the production for the U.S. version of the film. So, and it was very clear that they were interested in this possibility of making a film that they could distribute in Mexico, and also making a film that could be distributed widely in the United States. And I think Kigwer Murray, who had been tossing around a lot of exploitation films at this time, I think he had the passion to pull it off, and I think he had the connections to pull it off, and they bought it. They bought into it. No studio, apart from major studios that were filming and utilizing the facilities there in Mexico City for different productions. It was not that uncommon. No studio was coming down saying, "Oh, your films that you make here for Spanish-speaking audiences are amazing. We'd love to release them in the United States." Nobody was doing that.
We talk about the elements in it, how like it feels like a precursor to like Pee-wee's Playhouse, and there's because there's anthropomorphic, so there's this machine. I'll probably put a screenshot of this up. There's a machine with like movable lips and this long nose, and it's just this crazy thing.
The teletalker is what it's called.
Okay, thank you.
The teletalker, or in Mystery Science Theater is the pleasure mouth.
Yeah. I mean, it's yes. And like the beginning of the movie, there's like this extended children of all the world that would later, and then like you noted in your commentary that it predates It's a Small World at Disney, but it sure does feel like, I mean, it's like 10 minutes or I don't know how many minutes it is, but it goes on and on. It's like, well, we're just getting like every country represented here. It's like the beginning. It's like the opening ceremony of the Olympics, right? It's just like, and now Russia, and they come out. But it is such a bizarre, such a fun, strange movie. How did audiences? Do you know how audiences reacted to it when they saw it, especially in America?
Yeah, so Kigwer Murray distributed the film. He dubbed it, and he cut segments out that I think he felt might have been a little too, I would say, dark, potentially. It might have come off maybe as a little too scary. There's a musical number where Lucifer has all of his little demon minions dancing around, and then he singles out, pitch, and and that's where that goes. There's a couple of other little elements that were removed, some of which I incorporated as the bonus features on the Blu-ray. So when you package the film, you have to understand people in the United States going to see a movie, they're not, their expectation is not, I'm about to go see a foreign film dubbed in English. And there's no indication of that's what they're going to expect on the promotional material. The one sheets, the press books, nothing says anything about, this was filmed in Mexico, it's Spanish language film, dubbed in English. So from that standpoint, I think people were a little confused watching a film where things didn't really sync up necessarily. I mean, Kigwer Murray actually did a pretty brilliant job syncing the film the best he could, but you really can't. I mean, you can't make that perfect. It's just, there's not a way to make that perfect. It's an artistry unto its own, and they would perfect it in future films that they imported. But but still, it's not easy. So I think that's the first thing that threw people off. Um, I interviewed for the documentary people that saw these films as kids, and it was really a good time. The film itself wasn't as important as the fact that, it's a bunch of kids packed into a movie theater, just having fun. They don't have their parents there. I mean, it was very common at this point, and this is the reason why matinees were so successful for children, was that here's a place that's like a babysitter. I can drop off my kids at the theater and go shop, especially around the holidays. And that's the thing that was really brilliant for K. Gordon Murray, is that he really targeted times where kids were out of school, like the time periods. So Thanksgiving week and weekend, holiday, weeks and weekends. And he was very specific about the price of admission, very specific about his target audience. Parents probably, if they ended up having to go see these films, probably thought that they were just bizarre. But this was a child's fantasy land. Really just regurgitated onto the screen. What this movie does that's really interesting to me, and why I don't consider it like the best of the bad or anything. I don't consider it a bad film at all. It's ambitious in its scope. It's for what they were working with in Mexico. I think that they were pushing the envelope with certain things. There was mechanical effects and camera effects. I mean, most of it's all in camera. There's miniature work. There's some pretty fascinating stuff. It's not trying to, and I don't think they were trying to make a film that was for adults. I don't think that was their motive. I really do think that they were trying to, like, let's make a kids' fantasy land, but it was almost like, let's make this movie about Santa Claus a figure that we don't understand completely.
It has a lot of new and unique things that it brings to the table, and I just want people to be able to come in and give it a shot. I mean, that's why I wanted to do this video, because I want people to explore it. I wanted them to seek it out, to discover it, and maybe to put something out there that reinforces, your work, and just says, like, look, guys, this is something that's a lot of fun. It is very unique, and this is it's the 10th anniversary of this disc, so there's a reason to go pick this up too. Did you produce this disc? I know you're heavily involved in it.
Okay, so yeah, so for that particular release, I worked with VCI, who I'd had an on again, off again relationship with. So with that particular release, they had a new master that they were doing restoration for, and they were working with a contact in Mexico that was handling the Calderon library. And so they had the Spanish language version, in which they were subtitling, but they wanted to include the K. Gordon Murray version. So I had access to a 35 of the K. Gordon Murray version, but it's very pink. Like most of the Eastman Color film stock, it turns pink. It's pink, very pink. So it utilized the English language excerpts from that print and did the best to restore that with the master that was provided, which was from the negatives in Mexico. And then I basically assembled the K. Gordon Murray version and remixed the English language audio with the film. It took a lot of doing, but I did that for them. So there would be the English language version on the film. And then from there, I try to provide as much archival material that I'd stumbled upon at that time. Now I have much more than I did then, but I put that together.
So you've talked twice now. The first time we talked, which I'll reference people to, I'll put a link in the description of this video for our first interview. But you've talked twice about this K. Gordon Murray documentary that you started trying to create something new, which, by the way, I think is amazing. Trying to do something that hasn't been done, trying to talk about That's one of the things I love about you and I respect about your work is you're not like, oh, I want to do a documentary about Spielberg. What you paint the corners and the unexplored areas and really look for the you're looking under rocks and things like that. Not that K. Gordon Murray is under a rock, although maybe I don't know. You tell us. But what the documentary went into a drawer. Why and will we ever see any of that stuff?
I shelved the project for a couple of reasons. At the time, there was concern that I'd be sued because I'm utilizing clips from films that are while technically are K. Gordon Murray movies, they really don't belong to K. Gordon Murray anymore. The version that K. Gordon Murray put out there, he redubbed, repackaged, everything else. I guess you could say that's his movie, but they don't belong to him. They belong to the original owners that produced the films in their country of origin, whether it be Germany. There's a film in Spain. There's a film in there's a Dutch film. So there all these different countries of origins. Originally, he took their film and repackaged it. So there was concern, especially with Mexico, that I would be sued. There's a type of bad blood between what K. Gordon Murray did with the films there and what is owed to them, kind of thing. There is an aspect of that which would give them extra fuel for the fire that could be lawsuits. That since I'm not so concerned about, but then just coming into this field, I didn't want to lose everything on a documentary about K. Gordon Murray. Another aspect is that while looking at everything that was done, everything that was shot, everything I was utilizing, times have changed to a point where people have higher expectations in quality. And at the time, I wasn't shooting. The possibility of shooting in high definition was not within my economical reach. I shot with professional television cameras. Everything standard def is shot with really good professional cameras, but it's standard def. And a lot of the film footage at that time was all like fourth, fifth generation dubs from some VHS to a DVD. I mean, there was a lot of that. So a lot of the footage looked ratty. And I was like, this is going to be a really disgusting looking documentary, comprised of like, I mean, if you ever seen like there's like those Good Times compilation videos of trailers and they just look atrocious. Imagine a whole documentary made in our time looking like that. I have since found ways around quality and certainly have discovered better quality material. And the advent of things being rediscovered, at least in the country of origin, has opened the opportunity to be able to have better film clips to cut to versus before not having good clips. Mm-hmm. And also, as I mentioned, I mean, it shows my roots. It's something that you're uncomfortable about in a way. It's like, I might as well send like a nude pic of myself to everybody because it does feel that way. You're sort of exposing yourself, and here you're seeing my flaws. I'll use this platform to say that you'll see this documentary this coming year, in 2022. It will be a part of something special. And I took what I did and sort of made it, it's a story about K. Gordon Murray, but I sort of took the approach of making it slightly about the story of making a documentary about K. Gordon Murray. So there's there's a lot of missteps and misadventures in the process of making that documentary, and a lot of things that I did that are really out of the box. I documented pretty heavily the process of making the documentary. And so I thought, well, what if I filmed a new interview of myself telling the story of K. Gordon Murray, but also telling the story of finding the story of K. Gordon Murray. And so if I did that, that would be an interesting, because then it would become very meta. It would be about, here's a guy making a documentary. I've made documentaries already, and this is my first one. And then go from there.
I think that sounds amazing, and it sounds like you found the approach that you need to unlock everything. And I'm so excited that 2022 is the year, because this sounds really. I mean, just hearing you talk about it, I'm like, okay, well, this is already like a top 3 of the entire year for me, because that's the stuff that I love. So that's amazing.
Well, and just, so your audience doesn't feel like, well, wait a minute, where's Empire? Empire is coming out this year too, or 2022. Empire is also coming.
Leave him alone; it'll come when it comes.
Empire will come out before this in a release schedule, but this is something that is planned and currently being set up to come out in November, December. So.
Okay. Do you want to talk a little bit before we go about the Dune? There was a situation with Dune. I think there's a lot of questions in fandom about you were contributing a documentary. You know what? I'll let you explain it if you want to talk about it.
Okay. So I was contacted by the company that was handling the 4K restoration of the film. They're in Germany. The company Koch. They reached out to me because I was already doing work for them, and they mentioned, hey, we're working on the 4K restoration of Dune. Would you be up for doing something for it? And I think I jumped out of the seat. I was like, that is in my top 10 documentaries I want to do before I die. That is very close to number 1. And so I'd already done 2 of them by this point. So I was like, that's kind of cool. I'll knock out 3. If I can knock out 5, then I could die, halfway there. I would have halfway realized my life goal.
Waterworld, right? And
Streets of Fire, and then Dune. And so, anyway, so they told me, and I was like, yes. And very ambitiously, I was like, okay, this is how I'm going to do it. And I'm going to start reaching out to people and everything else. And then, like all of us, we were faced with this pandemic. So that changed. It didn't change the fact that they're restoring this film. It didn't change the fact that they're releasing this film, although it did change how they were releasing it, because they were really targeting it to come out around the time of the new adaptation of Dune. So because that kept moving, they kept moving it, which gave me more time, but it really just gave me more time to find stuff. It did not give me time to go shoot things because I wasn't 100% comfortable traveling, and I have too many people in my life circle that would, the danger of compromising them or them being ill would not be worth it to me. So from that standpoint, I had to sort of rethink the approach. Typically I was going to film it, and in the way I envisioned the documentary, because I had plenty of time to think about it way before they even approached me, because it was a dream. I wanted to shoot all the interviews a very specific way, and didn't want to be too heavy rely on talking heads. But I was going to utilize the format of talking heads, but in a very different way. And so I had to throw that idea out. But did get interviews. I did most of the interviews through Zoom, having them record their audio on other devices. But I used Zoom as the interface for people that were too old or one is antiquated to technology, I had to use the Zoom audio, talk through that, or use phones and things like that. I mean, I really used whatever I could. In a true sense, to me, documentary is the story. You tell a story. That's your number one responsibility. How you tell your story is, it's always based upon what you have to work with, what's available to you. So I trusted that I could tell the story the way I wanted to within reason, even though I had to compromise creatively how I was going to tell it as far as what I was filming and what I was just using as audio. So that was it. So when it came down to the documentary being released, I say maybe about the beginning of the spring of this year, I got a message from Arrow saying, because I was working with them on another project, and they say, oh, by the way, we're distributing Dune and we're going to distribute your documentary. Like, wow, okay, great, that's fine. I didn't hear anything about it. As it got closer to their deadline, they were very antsy about it, and for good reason. It's a business, they're a business, and so I was trying really hard to make this great ultimate documentary, not a bonus feature, not a supplement, but in the world that they're coming from, it's a bonus feature, it's a supplement. It's one thing listed there to help sell this product, something new that's just going to add value to the product. And I respect that. I mean, that's artists and business, they always have conflicts. But it just came down to it. There was a lot of pressure to finish the doc as fast as possible. I did everything I could to meet that challenge. I couldn't meet it. And things were taking longer. I was waiting on stuff. There were, other elements. Plus, we're dealing with, still the fears that come with, people being sick, things like that. There was all kinds of little things that were popping up around the time, and it did delay or be in conflict with completing the job. I didn't want to just throw something out there. And in the end, I feel like I halfway did throw something out there. But I was very passionate about it. I put a lot of time and energy that was not getting really paid for. Didn't have a contract with their own, and their contract was with the original person that hired me. So, but that's it. I mean, they just made a business decision. It was a decision that they were trapped into because they had to hold to the release date, and they had I don't know, a lot of people know about this, but manufacturing for disc, especially during all of this, has been very tight. And if you get a window as an independent, especially if you get a window in that manufacturing, you gotta kind of stick with that window, because a lot of the major studios that are utilizing the same facility, a lot of them, they get precedence over the indies. So you need a good window of time. And I don't think Arrow was trying to screw over the fans. I don't think anyone necessarily is responsible for this not being on there. I mean, it probably was more my call from a creative standpoint, because I didn't want to just throw something on there. By the time they needed it, is like, well, there's still all this work that needs to be done. I didn't want to just throw it on there, because I didn't think, I mean, I want people to like what I do. I want people to feel satisfied with what they're getting from me. So I don't want to just, I just sort of throw something out there. And I was afraid people wouldn't understand. I was already concerned about people not understanding the way the documentary is put together. I don't fault Arrow. I mean, they're not the bad guy in this. I mean, if there was a bad guy in the whole situation, it would be
COVID.
COVID. But it would certainly it would be the way that the business structure is set up for an independent. The windows that used to exist, the flexibility that used to exist, doesn't exist anymore.
You've given us a lot here. You've talked about a lot. You've given us some hints about what's coming in 2022. Can you tell? Is there anything else you want to talk about or promote about what you're working on or what's coming up soon?
I mean, there's lots of stuff coming out through different companies. I'm very excited about the potential of this coming year. Relationship with Film Detective is a fun relationship to have. Offers opportunities to discuss things that don't typically get focused on, and Bell Creek doing things with them, and it's always fun to work with those guys, and of course Imprint has been a really fun relationship. Hoping to really stretch that as far as I can, and there's some stuff that they have planned that really excited about. So but it's I can't say anything about most of it, but I would say that Empire will see the light of day in this coming year, and it'll either see the light of day through a distributor, or it'll see the light of day through my own distribution devices. There's also a really good release coming out through Kit Parker Films that's coming up, and that's for Walk in the Sun, and it has a really nice hour-long documentary that I did in collaboration with Alan Brody and Courtney Joyner. So
it's going to be amazing. Well, Daniel, thank you so much for your time. You've been so generous with your time, for giving us the information that you have. We'll be following you. Where can people keep up to date on everything that's going on with you?
I mean, I try to stay. I try to stay very active on social media, Twitter, Facebook, Instagram. But also, I try to update my website periodically too. So that's probably the best ways to stay up to date. But if you're more up to date than I am, it's because I've been too busy.
I can't imagine why. Just a couple of projects in the hopper. Guys, thank you so much for watching this video. I'll put all the links in the description for where you can continue these conversations, and jump in the comments and let's talk about this stuff. And have you seen Santa Claus? Let's talk about it. If you haven't seen it, you got to check it out. And I do want to recommend this disc because Daniel Griffith is all over it. And it is clearly done with a lot of love and a lot of affection. So, Daniel, thank you again. And thanks to you guys. So take care. Until next time, we will catch you later.